What's up guys, Tommy Bowyer here from Movie Rewind, and today I will be reviewing No Time to Die. So without further ado, let's get into it. No Time to Die was directed by Cary Joji Fukunaga. It is the 25th James Bond film in the series, and it is the fifth and final appearance of Daniel Craig in the title role of James Bond. There will be spoilers in this review, so I would suggest going to see this film before you watch this video. What they do with the character of Bond in this film is interesting, I have to say. I like that he still has an inability to trust those around him, especially as he believes early on in this film he has been set up by Madeleine Swann by Spectre, so he decides to just leave Madeleine and go off on his own because he believes he is safer on his own because no one can take advantage of him. So I like what they do with that. The fact that Bond has a daughter with Madeleine Swann is interesting. It adds a new dimension to the character. Personally, I would have liked his daughter to be introduced earlier on in the film, so then we could have seen more interactions with Bond and his daughter. However, it is what it is. The main villain of this film is alright. He has a cool design and he does have some memorable moments, but he is not in this film long enough to really stand out. I would have liked to have seen more of him because he looks like an interesting villain. I just wish that we saw more of him so he could have stood out more in my mind. Madeleine Swann, who is the main Bond girl in this, I'm not a massive fan of her and Bond's relationship. I don't really know what she adds to this film because she seems pretty weak throughout it. She's only there to either be rescued by Bond or fall in love with Bond. That's basically her purpose. So there's nothing wrong with her. I just don't think that her and Bond work that well together. There are better examples in this film of actresses that Bond actually has better chemistry with. I like the rivalry established between Bond and the female version of 007 in this film. I like that rivalrous relationship. I think that works really well. Plus, even though she's only in one mission, I like the chemistry Bond shares with the character of Paloma in this film, who's basically this woman who Bond goes on a mission with by the CIA. And I actually really like their scenes together. It's actually quite funny and they appear to have good chemistry. I would actually say they have more chemistry than Bond and Madeleine Swann. So overall, I would give the character development an 8 out of 10 because while I like what they do with Bond in this film, I'm not a massive fan of Bond and Madeleine Swann together. Plus, I wish we saw more of the villain. In terms of the performances, I cannot really fault them whatsoever. Daniel Craig does a great job as James Bond. He seems a lot more invested in his performance in this film than he was in Spectre, which is always a great thing to see. Rami Malek as the main villain, he does very well with the material that he was given. I think he could have done even better if his character had more screen time. Lea Seydoux as Madeleine Swann is okay, as with Rami Malek. She does a good performance. I would just have liked to have seen more development done with that character. And in terms of other actors in this film, Naomie Harris as Moneypenny, Ben Whishaw as Q, Ralph Fiennes as M, they are all so well cast to their roles. And honestly, even if Daniel Craig isn't going to appear in any more Bond films, I hope those characters continue in those roles because they're really well cast. Overall, I would give the performances a 10 out of 10. I cannot really fault them. They're all very, very well cast and I can't pick out a bad performance among them. The effects are really good. The action scenes that we are given in this film are very good. They're very well done. I like that they use practical effects. I'm a massive fan of practical effects, so it's nice to see them. And if you want to see really good choreography and action scenes, you would look at a Bond film because they always do really well. This isn't an action-packed Bond film though. I wouldn't say there's actually loads of action scenes. You know, I would say there are better action scenes in Casino Royale, for example. This film is more emotional based. It's more about the characters than the action scenes. However, the action scenes we are given and the effects in general are really well done. So I'd give the effects a 10 out of 10 because I can't fault them. They are done well, even if we don't get as many chances to see the practical effects in action than we usually would. This film's story is actually pretty good. There are no obvious problems with it. I like the fact that they introduce a daughter for James Bond, because it's the franchise delving in to new territory where they have not gone before. And for a franchise which is over 50 years old, that's what they need to do in order to survive. I like some of the characters introduced in this film. I'd say this film is very character driven, which is a good thing. It's not as action packed as previous Bond films, however that is not necessarily a bad thing. Despite the fact that this film is 3 hours long, when I was watching it, time flew by, which is always a great thing, especially for longer films. It means that you are invested in the film, which is always a good thing. There are, however, a couple of things which bug me. As I've said, I wish we saw more of the villain. He could have been a really memorable villain. We just don't see enough of him in this film. I would have liked to have seen more interactions between James Bond and his daughter, and Madeleine Swann as well, so that we could see that that relationship was special instead of just James Bond's one film relationships, which is sometimes what it comes across as. I would have liked the film to have been a little bit more intense. For example, one scene which comes in the final act of the film is when the main villain is holding Bond's daughter hostage and James Bond has to bargain with him. I've seen tenser scenes in that in other Bond films, so they could have done a better job with that. However, I think as a send-off to Daniel Craig's James Bond, this film ticks all the right boxes. So in terms of the story and writing, I would give that a 7 out of 10, because I do like the story of this film. It's got a very interesting plot and it produces some really interesting ideas. However, there's just a couple of nitpicks which stop him getting a higher mark. So for this film's special recognition, it has to be how Daniel Craig's departure was handled in No Time to Die. Now, Craig breathed new life into the James Bond franchise in 2006 with Casino Royale. I've enjoyed all of Craig's films as James Bond. Even Quantum of Solace is not as bad as people make it out to be. And to be honest, he is probably up there with Sean Connery as one of the perfectly cast James Bonds. However, was his departure handled in a decent way? I think it was. Basically, Bond is killed in this film. He saves the day yet again. However, he's poisoned by the main villain. And he knows that this poison will affect those around him. So he would rather die than survive and not be able to have any interactions with Madeleine or his daughter. So I think that was quite touching. The final conversation between Bond and Madeleine, I think, is done quite well. It's a heroic send-off, which I think is what Craig's Bond deserved. An underrated scene of his departure, I think, is the scene in which M, Q and Moneypenny are gathered in M's office, where they salute James Bond, and then about 5 seconds later they're like, right then, let's get back to work. And I think that sums up that even though they're grateful for Bond and they're very devastated that he's gone, they still have a job to do, so they get on with that job. I think that's done really well. Overall, I enjoyed his departure. I think it was appropriate. As I said, Craig looked more invested in this film than he did in Spectre, maybe because he knew it was definitely his last film, and I think it was appropriate to kill him off. I don't really know where they're going to go with this. All I can think of, like they've done with previous Bond films, is they will just reboot the franchise with a new Bond. Overall, I would give this special recognition a 9 out of 10 because I like what they did with Craig's departure. It is what he deserved, and I will miss him in that role. So in conclusion, No Time to Die is a strong Bond film. However, some people have claimed that it is the greatest Bond film ever made. And while it's all down to opinions, I would not rate it that highly. I would say it's Craig's third best Bond film. And while the Casino Royale and Skyfall, which are the ones I would put above this film, are outstanding, this film was good as well. It just weren't up to that standard. There was a couple of nitpicky things which stopped this film being the best Bond film ever released. However, I think it was a good send-off for Daniel Craig. It is what he deserved. Overall, I would give No Time to Die a well-deserved 44 out of 50, which gives it a grade 2 ranking. I enjoyed No Time to Die. It is not a bad film. It's one of the better James Bond films. However, personally speaking, it's not the greatest Bond film ever released. So thanks for watching, guys. I really do hope that you enjoyed my No Time to Die movie review. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe in order to receive great and maybe even improved quality content in the future, and I will see you in another one. See ya!